Fonts are extremely prevalent in today's society in everyday life. You may see up to hundreds and hundreds of fonts every day, and each font is curated for its exact purpose, whether it be on a billboard or in Times Square for advertisements, or maybe it be a book specifically curated for legibility. All books, all fonts are curated for a specific purpose, and they're all specifically designed for a certain type of reading. Now, the very first printing press was invented in 1440 by Johannes Gutenberg. Now, the way that printing presses worked was they used reusable letter blocks, which were made from wood and metal. They were pressed onto paper with a printing press and then printed onto magazines, books, and mass-produced for society. It took a lot of time to arrange all the letters in the correct format and in the correct size and in the correct order in order to write or print long pages of books or magazines. But as soon as you had all the letters in place, you could print as many copies as you needed. So, as printers began to run into problems concerning the typefaces of the lettering, such as legibility and ease of use, that's where the font evolution really began. So the first era of fonts was black letter typefaces. Now, they look like this, and in Cameron Chapman's History of Fonts, A Typeface History, this font was used in the printing press from 1440 to 1470. So the reason that they are designed this way, in such bulky manner and a lot of intricate details, is it mimicked the handwriting style of the time. So it consists of thick strokes, and it's a calligraphy style. So the letters were very large, and they took up a lot of space on the pages, and it was very inconvenient to be printing books in this style because of how big the letters were, and it took more pages and more time to assemble. In Indra Cooper-Schmid, between futurization and transition, diversity, standardization, and readability in contemporary typographic landscapes, she describes how English culture developed and transitioned into Roman lettering shapes instead of black letter. So, our Roman style font, in this transition, important texts like books and encyclopedias were actually reprinted in this style font to accommodate the new legibility standards. This is an example of what the Roman style lettering looks like. According to Britannica Encyclopedia's Roman, the first official Roman typeface was designed in 1470, but some Roman lettering were even traced back in the 1460s. So thinner and more simpler letters were designed, and this was helped to increase the legibility and to take up less space on the pages. So with lettering taking up less space on the pages, the italics font were developed as an entirely different font typeface, and they were produced separately as a standalone type, and this was a way that was primarily used to fit more letters into a smaller space like pocketbooks, and today italics are actually only used primarily for emphasis on words. The old style fonts, these were developed in the following 200 years. The old style fonts consisted of more contrast in the strokes, and it also had distinctive features like the wedge-shaped serifs, and as well as the horizontal crossbars that we see here, opposed to diagonal. The letters are generally more sharp and more defined in comparison to other fonts. The transitional typefaces are next. Transitional typefaces included a much more vertical point, opposed to the old style. The strokes are much more up and down and vertical, opposed to slightly slanted, like the old style. So this is according to Transitional Typefaces, The History of Type Founding Classification by Craig Eliason, and he says in the mid-1700s that the transitional style was introduced. So these letters had fully vertical stress, meaning that, as you can see here, the letters are more upright and the strokes are thinnest at the top and bottom. At this point, people had really determined that the type style had moved far enough away from the handwriting mimicry that it was no longer associated with that. The next big era is the digital age fonts. This began around the 1960s, And Steve Barth, in his article Digital Designs, he talks about how digital vector fonts, as you can see here, they were introduced because they were able to display fonts on computers by using less memory than traditional fonts here. Fonts like Georgia were developed specifically for digital use because people found that in pixel fonts on computers, they were less legible and they didn't have as much contrast to make the letters really pop and be functional. So in the 1990s, the font Georgia was developed, and it had very high contrast between the strokes and very strong serifs. This made the font easily recognizable and more legible to on low-quality screens. OpenType is a program that adopted the use of variable fonts, and this allowed, OpenType was developed to allow cross fonts between platforms. The variable fonts, they allowed different versions of fonts to be used, as in using thinner or bolder strokes and using different widths. So, as we explored the different styles of typography through time, black letter, Roman, and digital style fonts, we learned how each individual font was able to have its own unique differences and very special in terms of how it was able to cater towards its purpose. I hope that as people learn about fonts and typography and the development of the culture and the impact that it had on society, that more people become eager to learn more about the evolution of typography. Here are my sources.